One.
Blast off.
All right, we are live. Our very first episode. Where blue collar, green pockets. Tonight's episode is going to be about nurses. Good Lord, we need them right now. We needed them before. We're going to need them after. We've got a couple on our panel tonight. They're going to talk about how they got into nursing, the route they took with education and work, and we're going to get this going. Try to get the show done within the hour tonight. So our first, we've got Nick Julin. He's out of Virginia Beach, Virginia, and then we've got Sue Mitchell out of Middleton, Delaware. Let's start with Nick. How you doing tonight, Nick?
I'm doing well. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. Nick, what made you choose nursing to start with? You're a dude. Back in the day, it started out a female thing. Let's talk about this because this is one of the things with trades. Like, guys are scared to get into this. Talk to me.
I always wanted to help people out. I loved medicine. I had an aunt and uncle who were in the medical field. My aunt was an ICU nurse for, I don't know, 30 years. And she's like, come out here, come to California at the time, see what we do. And I took that venture after high school. So I was an EMT for about 4 years while I was going to do my prereqs for nursing school. I got the hospital was like I worked in the ICU trauma for that time. Before becoming an EMT, I was a transporter for radiology, so I got to see, meet a lot of patients, see a lot of stuff behind the scenes in the hospital, and I don't know. I always wanted to help people out.
That's great. That's great. Also in the panel tonight, I forgot to mention we got Chuck Wilson and Dave Jones who are going to be regulars on the show. Chuck's writing a book with me. Dave is like the old man guru we keep around for all his wisdom. Sue, how about you? Tell us how you got into the nursing field.
When I was in high school, I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do. And I worked in a Chinese American restaurant with my favorite busboy, Dave Jones. And I realized that I really liked people. And so right out of high school, I went into an LPN program and worked as an LPN for 11 years as I worked toward my bachelor's in nursing because I like people. And it definitely has been, I've got 45 years as a career and going strong, and it definitely was the right fit for me, without a doubt.
That's great. That's great. So, Sue, when you decided to do this, did you go through a vocational school? Did you go straight to college? You just get a job waiting tables? Talk to me. How did you go through the whole process of becoming a nurse?
Well, right out of high school, I went into became a licensed practical nurse at Delaware Technical Community College, which is local.
So you didn't take any trades in school. You waited till afterwards, and then you paid for that
Correct.
education.
Correct. There weren't really a lot. I mean, we're going back. I've been a nurse for 45 years or so we're going back a few years, and I'm not sure there were a lot of trades that you could get in high school per se. And I really had no idea what I wanted to do, but I knew I wasn't. I was not the 4-year college direction for me.
Okay.
And so I wanted to figure out but I knew I liked people. Much like Nick kind of said, I liked people. I worked well with people, and I felt that that was a path I wanted to take. So I felt, well, I tried this, and it definitely is my life dream.
So you just once you figured it out, you enrolled in your local community college, and how long did that take?
That took 1 full year right out of high school. And then I worked at that. I did lots of different jobs. I worked med surg in a hospital. I worked pediatrics at a major children's hospital here in Delaware. And I ended up over time, it became really clear. I ended up in long-term care. That's really my love. And life kept throwing me back into long-term care. So I eventually went on for a while and was the director of nursing in long-term care facilities. At one point, I was an administrator and was administrating nursing homes. That was not my joy because it took me away from the patients as much as I like being with the patients. So now I just try to stay with the patients, and long-term care for the older rehab type of person is my my love, my joy.
That's great. So, were you in the medical field while you were in the taking that college year, or were you working, fast food or something like that, or were you
Oh no,
actually?
well, I got my LPN right out of high school. So I graduated, went right into the class went right in for a year. And so a year later after high school, I was an LPN back in 1975.
Okay, so
Became
was that
LPN.
like a full-on year, just day in, day
Yes,
out? Okay, so you didn't work at
yes.
all while you were taking those classes?
I continued to work in the restaurant, which is where
Okay.
I figured out where I liked people, which was very close to my home, which was helpful.
What restaurant
And
was
then
that? Where'd you
um,
work? What
oh, it
restaurant?
was called the Surrey, and it was in Wilmington, Delaware. It was a Chinese American restaurant,
Okay.
and it was, yeah, they were pretty. It was a pretty cool place. I learned a lot there, met a lot of nice people, and like I said, it really directed me for nursing. I had no idea what I wanted to do, but I think I looked at my strengths back then and thought, well, what do I do well? And I liked people. I mean, I had certain groups of people, the clubs that would come in every month. They'd always ask for me to, wait on them and stuff. So
She
that,
made she made bank. Okay, when she was doing that.
And for those at home, Sue is Dave Jones' sister.
Full disclosure.
I've she wasn't going to claim him. I had to get that out there.
yeah,
She made a lot of money. She had a huge following. I'm just
yeah, I
going to add
really
that.
did.
She had a huge following. I mean, literally, she had a huge following. I was the busboy, and our mother would come over there and hang out in the place, and she would come into whoever Susan was waiting on. My mother would always end up getting an invitation to sit down with the families. It was
Yeah.
the weirdest thing.
So Nick, back to you, bud. So tell me this path you took to get into the nursing as far as schooling and jobs. How did you do it, bud?
So initially, I was doing the 4-year route. I went to a junior college in San Diego for about 2 years, and I decided to take a break. Like, do I want to go to nursing? What do I want to do? And at that time, I was working in a hospital, and I'm like, well, let me try this EMT. I did the EMT for 4 years, did the ICU, and I was probably between 22 to 25. I was just loving life, enjoying what I was doing as a job as an EMT.
So was that a
And,
2 year associates you had?
no, I was just doing my prereqs to get
Okay.
into San Diego State. So they had this program where you do all your prereqs, you transition into the program once you completed them. And I kind of took a break. I was like, all right, I'm burnt out of school right now. Let me just enjoy life. So I became the EMT for 4 years. After that, I said, I need to get back into school. I really love nursing, or I really love being in the hospital. I think I need to, sit down and go up. So I actually went through a adult living program, Kaplan University, and it was an 18-month program for my associates. So I did that, and I was a nurse for about, I don't know, 8 years before I went back and got my bachelor's.
All right, tell me about that bachelor. So we get a lot of feedback here. Do you have a phone on or something?
I'm sorry?
Do you have a phone on or something? You're getting a little back feed.
No.
All right. So when you're doing this bachelor, so you're working. You've already been in the field. You're making money. You're doing your thing. Now you're going back to school. So tell me how you went back for this bachelor's degree.
So the hospital system I work at is pushing for every nurse to have their bachelor within 5 years of joining their company. It's kind of supports the 2020 nurses. 80% of the nurses will have their bachelors in the healthcare field.
But they can
So-
start out without. I mean, they get in, they get that
Oh,
job,
yes.
and then now they can take this additional schooling. Now, are they willing to pay for any of this, Nick, or give you a rebate once you do it?
They gave every year they gave a certain amount of money as long as you're in school. So
That's great.
I went part time, even though I was working full time, and so it helped. And there were some other programs out there like work first that helped pay for some of my schooling too. So that really helped out the first year
Okay.
during school. So yeah, it was kind of transition. The school I went to was an all online. I'd never done that, so That was interesting and challenging at the same time, but I completed it, and I'm so happy that I do have my bachelor's.
Hey, Nick,
Still
I want real
I have
quick. We got some back feed going.
oh, there's some back. Hey, Nick, I got a quick question for you. When you got the bachelor's degree, did you do anything different job wise? Like, was there anything in your job that you did with the bachelor's degree that you could not do with the certificate degree?
With my job now.
No, yeah, with any, like in a standard nursing job, like if you have an RN like certificate, let's say, and you don't have the bachelor's, like you have the 2-year, whatever the RN is, and then you get the bachelor's. Is there anything different you do in that job having the bachelor's that you would have? Is there any additional thing you're allowed to do, dispensing wise or anything?
Yes. So on the floor, they have a team leader. If I have my bachelor's, I can, with the floor training, I could be a team leader it's kind of like a charge nurse.
Okay.
And also people who do some of the managerial jobs that the manager can't do during the shift. So yeah, having that bachelor's can help in that direction. There is a little extra pay that comes with it too.
And wouldn't that experience help too? I mean, just having the bachelor's versus being there, 8 years like you were. I mean, having that extra experience with the bachelor's, wouldn't that make you a better leader too?
Yeah. Oh yeah. The majority of the bachelor's program talks about leadership, the business aspect of nursing.
And we know that's big business. Now,
So Nick, you're saying that having that bachelor's was beneficial to not just you, I mean, because it added money to your pocket, but was it beneficial to the patients, the hospital overall?
Yes, it did. The bachelor's program kind of opened my eyes to a lot of evidence-based practice that nursing professions focus on patient care. How do we improve on our care? How do we improve on as being nurses? And the continuing education makes me a better nurse year in every year. So it opens up a lot of doors with having my bachelor's. If I just stayed as a associate's degree, I'm limited to what I can do. With the bachelor's, there's so many avenues. I don't have to be at the bedside. Like Sue was saying, that being a director, being a charge nurse, a manager, there's so many other things you can do that don't have to be at the bedside. It doesn't have to be at a major hospital. It could be at a corporation that oversees medical supplies, legal aspects. So a bachelor's kind of opens that door and say, hey, it's another starting point. I feel.
right. And how much money would you say for the first part before you got to your bachelor's, where they helped you out get that? How much would you say you spent for some of that schooling?
Say that. I didn't quite understand.
Before you went for the bachelor, the associate, the 2 years you took of school while you were working and all, about how much money do you think you spent doing those classes before you ever went to take any bachelor classes?
So my associate's degree was, since it was adult learning, was half. It was all loans. So I'm in June, I'm paying for my last loan for that my associates. So you're almost 12 years now. I'm finally finishing paying off my associates.
How much was that loan? Like, be honest.
I have to think about it. Probably 50,000
And that was for 2 years.
18 months.
Was that for the bachelor's?
Associates.
That was for the associates. Wow.
So
Because it's adult learning. It's not like state college, universities.
Yeah.
right. So basically, that's equivalent to the 2-year association in a high school. Because I mean, the nurses, they have a 2-year program there that come out with that associates for the most part. I've got a couple links.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So you could have. My point is, you could have saved that money if you knew what you wanted to do younger.
Yes. Also, it comes down to time too, because when I applied for nursing school, there was a 2-year wait list just for the junior college to get into nursing, to get my associates.
Wow.
Did I want to wait that 2 years, or did I want to spend 6 months kind of prepping for my 18-month associates and getting paid? So it was, you had to juggle that. It was like, do I want to wait and maybe get accepted to a junior associate's degree at a junior college, or do I want to go to adult learning right now?
Right.
Do 18 years or 18 months and then spend, now I can work as a nurse, getting paid much more than if I was just waiting.
Okay, and during that time frame between the associates and bachelors, I mean, salary-wise, give us a rough, I mean, I'm sure it changed yearly or whatever, but give us a rough estimate.
So it did change. I lived in California for about 7 years as a nurse, and then the rest in Virginia. So the pay is huge. Before I left, I was close to 6 figures in California. Here in Virginia, I think I'm about 76,000.
Okay.
Or more. It give or take, because I do a lot of call in my position. So there is, and also I think the healthcare field or my company bases my pay on years experience.
Right.
What kind of hours do you work?
So right now I work in the endoscopy department at the local hospital here, and it's 72 hours. But I do take call 1 day a week, 1 weekend a month.
So that's 72 hours in what span?
Pay period.
And what is the pay period? 2 weeks?
2 weeks, yes.
Okay.
So,
Are they 12-hour shifts or 8-hour shifts?
They're roughly 8 hours. So endoscopy deals with outpatients and inpatients of the hospital. So it can vary on the time frame, what time we get in, what time we leave. Pretty much.
It seems like in healthcare to me, there's so many different options that if somebody with you or Susan's credentials can go into. It just seems like the avenues that spider out from there are just endless. If you had a 10th grade kid, like coming out of 10th grade, all right, that was not in a vocational school. Let's say they did not offer the program like Jeb was talking about earlier, maybe to get a head start. And this person wanted to get a job. Let's say their end goal was to get into nursing. And this person wanted to get a high school type job, like we all have in high school. You know, we all work doing something. What would you recommend them do to get prepared for what you do? Both of you. I mean, either one of you.
There was volunteers, a lot of volunteers that came from the high schools, that even in the colleges, that were just getting hours for they can apply to their degree.
So maybe volunteering in a nursing home or something like that?
A hospital, yes. Yeah.
Okay. Sue, do you have any suggestions for people like that?
I think it's about trying to identify, or actually a parent trying to help their child identify what their strengths are, where they could really excel. And because I think that's a really tough thing. You know, we're all still learning about what we want to do when we grow up, as it is. And I think it's a really tough thing to figure out what you want to do. And I think the drive that happily is we're seeing more direction back to the trades, but I think for a long time it was like you have to go into a 4-year college. And I think a lot of people who ended up going to 4-year college really weren't intended to be there. And so maybe they needed to find some other direction. Maybe work in a daycare and they find out they love taking care of children, want to become a teacher. You know, volunteer in a nursing home, work in a restaurant, something that helps you really kind of figure out what you like. You might not like working directly with people. I have friends who are nurses who are very computer oriented, and they're not really people persons, but they're great with the computer, and that allows them with their nursing skills and the computer to really help in their job situations that they're in. So I think it's about finding your strengths, and those in your circle, your family circle, helping you identify, and your teachers certainly helping you identify what your strengths are.
Your strengths and your passion, right?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
What floats your boat? Sounds like you both have a passion for the medical field you're in.
Yeah.
And that's where we're at with this. You know, we want to just get all this information out. We're going to do a different career every week, and let the youth watch this and realize, okay, there's nursing. I can do this at school. Votech, it's free. I can go 2 years. I can graduate with what this guy just paid $40,000 for it. It took him 20 years to pay off, right? Okay, I mean, this is where we're at. Or I can go to a 4 year, pay, you know, by the time I end up paying a $40,000 loan off, it's $100,000. I mean, if you do student loans and all that, 6% interest over 20 years of time, which is the national average, you're looking more like 100. So we want to get all of them out. And what y'all both said is there's so many different jobs that y'all can do just with the nursing. So you start at the 2 year associates, you get that. Then you decide, what do you like about nursing? Do you see all these different jobs? Okay, let's take my bachelor's of this. Let's take extra courses of this. If my employer's going to pay for it, why not? So let's get some more of those different jobs that y'all have seen that other people are doing that, you know, y'all chose your path, but let's get some perspective on all the other different ways they can go with this nursing.
A side note, when I was in high school, I remember my stepdad saying, "Why don't you join the Navy?" Or I'm like, "No way, I don't want to do that." But looking back, being in the healthcare field or being an EMT in the hospital, I met some corpsmen, and if I knew that the military or Navy had corpsmen, I would probably have joined. Because they did that. They learned to be an EMT, a doctor, and a nurse all in one.
That's a great point. Go ahead, Sue.
I was just going to say, I've actually always thought the same thing. If I could go back now, I would have gone to the military, and I'm sure followed the same path, but not taken that direction. At the time, it just never, it just wasn't. It never occurred to me, to do that. But looking back, and I will often say to younger people, I often get interns, people out of high school who want to, I work in public health now, so they want to look at the public health side of things for a project or something, or nurses who are in college who need to do their help with their public health course. And I often say to them, have you ever considered looking at the military as an option, just to help you sort of see the world in a different way, maybe?
It's a phenomenal option. We're going to have many military nights too. What were you saying about your dad trying to get you in the military, Nick?
I was just, at that time, being in high school, it's like, no way, I don't want to do that. I'm out of here.
Haircut? Was it the haircut?
I thought the same thing.
I'll leave it as that. I'll just leave it as
I do have one important question then, Nick. When you were taking those online classes, did you wear pants?
Always.
Liar.
No, even now, I knew some nurses that actually went back when they got their masters. They joined the reserves to pay for all their college, their previous nursing debt, and unfortunately, some of them got called up, and for example, one trauma nurse, she got pulled from San Diego to Germany, and she was there for about 1.5 years. But she made that commitment, and she loved what she was doing, so it helped everyone out.
Now, I posted some links on the page earlier for wages and whatnot and salaries. Some of these nursing careers, I mean, they're knocking back some serious coin. What would it take to get from where either one of y'all are? What extra would you have to do at this point? Again, hopefully the company's paying for some of that dime to move forward.
I think here, based on what Nick said, Delaware is sort of in line with the dollars. I think one of the key things, though, is really taking advantage of whether you're working in a hospital, and if you have any opportunity to take advantage of developing sort of a specialty. I mean, nursing is a wide open field.
Yes.
So if you develop a specialty and you get really good at doing something, you can really go on to become let's say wound care is something simple. You become a specialist in wound care, and you can really take that places. So I would really encourage people to, as they go on in their career and become more experienced at it, that if an opportunity sort of presents itself, to take advantage of it, a new learning experience or something, because sometimes that takes you just down a path you never thought you would go. And I think that's really important. Some nurses go on to not only be a nurse, to become a nurse, become a lawyer, or to do other things with the nursing career. And nursing is really, like a lot of things, it's not a career, it's your lifelong, it's what you always be a nurse. And you can take it in a lot of directions. And I think nursing affords a lot of opportunities for people to do lots of different things. I mean, you can be bedside in a nursing home, you can be in a hospital, ICU, you can be management and home health, you can be on a helicopter, helping critical patients get to the care after they've had an auto accident. It just being a nurse is not, there's so many opportunities within nursing that I think it's one of the really great professions for that.
I agree. And how understaffed would y'all say the nursing industry is right now? And we're talking pre-pandemic, and then we're going to get into that. But right now, let's just say the baby boomers coming up before this new crisis. I mean, how slack are y'all on people?
I think it's going to become apparent that it's a concern, and I think there's always that debate between the business side and the nursing. Like, how many patients should a med-surg nurse be responsible for? I still work part-time bedside in a rehab, and when I work a shift, I'm responsible for 32 patients, me. And as you can imagine, 32 older patients with dementia, various needs, the families who are concerned. That 8 hours is a real challenge.
I can imagine. Now, is that because y'all are more understaffed, or is it back to just the money?
That's basically the industry, and it's money. And whether it's a nursing home or it's ICU, how many patients do you have in an ICU? The dollars say you should have 4. Well, imagine if you have a loved one in ICU on a ventilator. How relevant is that today? How difficult is it for one nurse to manage that many patients? I just think there needs to be a shift on the importance of nursing and what nurses really do, as opposed to the business end of nursing sometimes, because it makes it very difficult.
Which is your passion while you do it.
Yes, exactly.
Excellent.
I commend you, Sue, because I couldn't find myself in a long-term care facility. I did a lot of my orientation. I saw patients leaving the hospital go from me taking care of 5 patients. That same patient gets transferred to a long-term care facility, and then you have to take on the same job I was doing, but times 5 or 10. It blows my mind. It breaks my heart.
And I think it transcends all walks of nursing, that the business end versus what nurses do. And like any business, there's so many unpredictabilities. You're going as a plumber and you go in to fix a simple sink job and the whole thing falls apart. And then you find yourself in a much bigger situation. And nursing is very much like that. And it's unpredictable. And I think that's the unpredictability.
In my field, I call that opening a can of worms.
Yeah.
So I got 2 different experiences with number of patients, patient-nurse ratio. So California went right a year after I became a nurse. California implemented patient ratio laws. So for med-surg, you were 5 to 6 patients per nurse. Tele 3 to 4, depending on their acuity. ICU 1 to 2. Now, coming to Virginia, that can vary depending on what hospital you work at. And on average, it was between 6 to 7 patients per nurse on the med-surg. And then it would go down. Biggest concern for me is my license. What if something happened to that patient? I'm responsible for taking care of these patients. As long as I do my job, I do it right, I should be covered. But that's it. Sorry, looks like my internet connection is off.
You're good.
So it's at the same time I'm here to take care of the patient as best as I can with the equipment I have, the best equipment that is provided to me, and I hope that there's. I don't plan for the best, or plan for the worst, hope for the best type of thing. And we're kind of walking something like that right now with this pandemic.
Yeah, so you mentioned that. So right now, on y'all's perspective, talk about that with, being low on supplies. Are we really that low on supplies at your places? Can you talk about that?
I think that varies state to state, quite honestly, in the type of facility you're working in. I know I went to do a shift 2 weeks ago at the long-term care, and I just do a couple shifts a month. I'm a little bit older. Still run circles around the youngins. But I'm going in, they checked my temperature and gave me a disposable surgical mask and indicated to me that if I was coming back, that was my mask for 48 hours to use. And I will tell you, after 8 hours of wearing that mask, it never came off. I could not have done it more than the second time. I mean, it's just, it's difficult. But I think, there's some places now, the way this thing is kind of going across country, I think that there are people who are having to wear a mask for a week. So I can't really whine about that. But it's difficult because if nothing else, I've always been able to change the mask, change your gloves. You have certain things you do. I also think healthcare people are probably, kind of less at risk than other people because we're used to doing this stuff. We know how to take our gloves off, put them on. We're always washing our hands. We're used to being just careful and cautious, and it becomes just part of your being. It's just the way you do things. And so I think it's a little more difficult for people who don't have that kind of training and that kind of background because it's kind of new to them. So for nurses, it's the way we roll anyway.
And Nick, you were telling me earlier today, so your new job, so you're not working much right now, right?
Yes, we're so we do a lot of outpatients, and elective procedures and surgeries are kind of put off to the back burner. We still do patients. We still have patients to see and procedures to do. Not a whole lot, but I'm also getting cross-trained for team nursing. If it was to get bad, we're preparing. So if I was to be with an ICU nurse, a tele nurse, med surg, it would be a team nursing job to cover so many patients. So I'm getting cross-trained.
You partner up and work together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of cool. It's interesting. I'm learning stuff I forgot about 2 years ago, relearning. And I also get to see what ICU, what kind of things they do, and learn new traits, new tricks. So it's a good experience.
Okay. Moving forward, if you do have to do that, does that include like a ton of overtime? I mean, what does that a pay bump? I mean, what's the next level if you have to go in and, like you said, this takes a turn for the worse?
Well, we would focus our care. I think it would just be regular hours. I think if it was like New York City, people were working every day, 12-hour shifts. You're talking about a lot of overtime, a lot of double time. I don't even know if they even offer hazard pay, but it's.
Y'all deserve
We
it.
kind of roll with the punches. We're here to help. We're here to take care of. There's only so many nurses out there and so many, beds in the hospital that we can care for. But we're, like they said, plan for the worst, hope for the best. And the way they have it set up is awesome because you have a team that can do certain things. We can get the right person for the right job if it was to happen.
Sue, up in Middleton, Delaware, how are the numbers looking up there as far as people in hospitals and whatnot that y'all
We're on the rise. The hospitalized people who are critical are on the rise. Deaths are on the rise. The numbers testing positive are on the rise, and we haven't hit what they call the apex yet. We're sort of following behind New Jersey and New York. Delaware has worked really hard to sort of close our borders and keep it at bay, and people to really we really started separating early on. So I think it's going to get worse before it gets better, but I really feel as a state, Delaware's worked really hard to try to not model itself after what happened in New York or New Jersey or in Italy and all those other unfortunate places.
So Dave's in Florida because they won't let him back in. Is that
Exactly.
what's going on?
I'm self-quarantined
Yeah.
for 6 months, just to be sure. Can never be too safe.
Chuck, we
What's
haven't
the-
heard from you. Go ahead, Chuck.
Well,
you got something to say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Chuck, wake up over there, will you?
Definitely have something to say when it comes to nurses. And my first wife battled cancer for 28 years. And so I spent inordinate amounts of time in hospitals working with the nurse staff and the rest of the staff as well. I mean, it was and felt like I became a nurse when it came time to go home, or even in the hospital as a advocate for my wife's care and so on. And my hat is off to you folks. I mean, there were times when I wasn't entirely happy with the nurse, but I would say that the score was hugely high. I mean, they were if there were problems, it was because of those changes in demand for care that can happen. And I mean, I learned so much from the nursing staff. They were the real people connecting. I mean, the doctors, I mean, you would absorb what you could, but they were, you know, in a sort of a different realm way too often. But the nurses really connected, and so important to anyone's survival of anything. And so if this country's curve is being you know, flattened, turned downward more quickly, it's because of the nurses. So I'm just very enamored with you folks. But question, I mean, what would you say is what keeps you in nursing? Where is that sort of gold mine, that little layer of gold that keeps you in there?
Helping patients every day, either with a procedure. I'm a big hands-on type of guy, and I love procedures. I love surgery, so that kind of keeps me going. It's something new, and being able to say I'm able to help that patient out.
If I ever need,
Nick, do you feel appreciated, Nick, in your job?
Yeah. I know there's times it can be tough, but what I love about my department is teamwork makes the dream work. And you know, I don't hesitate to go to work. I love, you know, I'm glad, you know, I have a team. The doctors I work with, the nurses, my manager makes our department work, and it's great. We work with so many. I work with anesthesiologists, nurse anesthetists. We have techs in the room, and the GI doctors. So it's a great department.
Sue?
I love the bedside nursing too, and as life has just kept throwing. I tried to get out of long-term care for long, and it's not my full-time job now. I actually work more in the public health realm. I work with cancer patients and programs that help them pay for their cancer treatment. So I get a lot of satisfaction about helping those people get their treatment started and helping them along, and I get a lot of personal satisfaction out of that. And I think when I'm bedside, it's sometimes it's so simple. You're trying to get someone who doesn't really want to drink a cup of water, you get them to drink a cup of water. Are you able to just meet their simplest need, get their hair washed? Sometimes it's not even like about the nursing per se. It's not about the skill of nursing. It's just sort of being there for them and meeting whatever need that is. And I think too that most nurses understand, I would hope and I believe that most nurses understand that one of the most difficult things in long-term care is the families at times, because they just, they roll in, I work a 3 to 11 Saturday night, one shift a month, let's say, and they roll in at 5 o'clock to see mom, and they want to know why her TV isn't working. And I'm the nurse. I'm like, okay, let me see what I can do. And I've switched out TVs. I think just nurses do what needs to be done. It doesn't matter what it is. And sometimes it's not necessarily something that falls under the scope of nursing. Sometimes it's something, like I said, TVs, remote controllers, you name it. It's fixing something that needs to be, trying to fix something that needs to be fixed. And the satisfaction I get, and I think most nurses do, about being able to do that. And sometimes, honestly, with our profession, it's helping somebody pass peacefully and nicely and pain-free. It's not always like the outcome maybe the family wants, but it's the best we've got. So there's a lot of satisfaction in that.
And you're saving most of them, though, right?
Yep.
Atta girl.
What do you?
Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
Sorry, Jeb. Go
No,
ahead.
you're good. I was calling you. You looked like you had something. Go ahead.
I was just wondering. I'm just sitting here thinking. Of course, I know it's part of Susan's story. We heard Nick's earlier. I mean, Susan, so I'm just sitting here thinking of all the different kinds of nursing you've done. Like I remember when you were at Mary Campbell Center. Were you an LPN then, or were you just an assistant?
I was an LPN.
Okay, so she was at, what was Mary Campbell Center?
Mary Campbell Center was a home.
That was really your first place, right?
Pretty much, yeah. It was a home for young adults who were born with limitations, whether it's cerebral palsy, cystic fibrosis, what they used to call mental retardation. Now they call it other things, autism. So it was really it was a long-term care facility for people who had Down syndrome, different kinds of disabilities, and it gave them an opportunity to not have to live at home. They were able to go someplace else and get some great programming and different things, but they often had very significant physical limitations where they needed nursing assistance with it.
So you really went from that to regular nursing. I mean, there was a time there where you worked in a burn center, didn't you?
Crozier Chester.
You left that out. She worked in the Crozier Chester Burn Center, which is on the East Coast, one of the renowned burn centers. And I think you did that while you were in school, right? At Widener?
Yeah, when I was at Widener getting my bachelor's, I took me 11 years to get my bachelor's because I had to work. I paid for it. I never had loans. I paid for it, and I worked either full-time or part-time while I was going to school to pay for it, and had lots of incredible experiences, including 3 years. And most of my jobs were 2 to 3 years. I would keep them. And this was at Crozier Chester Medical Center at the burn unit, and that was just an incredible place, and to see what people go through. I worked at a large children's hospital that's here in Delaware, and that's when I learned I wasn't really a pediatric nurse. You do something and then you realize that's not really my thing. But I learned a lot doing med surg, and I think that's the difference too. When I came out in 1984, back in 1975, when I was out of high school and got my LPN, you were really everybody's road was to go in and get some good med surg experience. And I think now that's more difficult for people to do and not as available. And I really think that's kind of critical, because that gets you your basic bedside 101, and then you can go and branch out from there. And I've seen a real significant shift in that over the years. And so I think it's more challenging for young nurses coming out of, they come from high school, whether they go 2 years or 4 years for their BSN, coming out, trying to figure out where to go, because I think it's more difficult to find that path of doing the med surg, getting the experience, and then sort of figuring out what your strength is in nursing, what direction you want to take.
I think what amazes me there is, if you look at, and we're talking about trades here, we're talking about people that get certificates, start with a 2-year degree. What's amazing about yours is, okay, so you started at this Mary Campbell Center. At one point you worked in this burn center. At one point you ran a hospital, right?
Mhm.
At
Nursing
one
home.
point, she ran several nursing homes. I mean, was the person in charge of a nursing home. The reason I say that for anybody that's listening is, it's like a lot of the industries we talk about on here, that you don't go to college for a bachelor's degree. You just take another path, and within those paths, there's all these spiders of roads you can go down. There's all these spiders of roads. I mean, Nick, you could probably leave tomorrow and go get a job as a pharmaceutical salesperson, okay, with what you know.
Mhm.
All right. And there's probably some procedure you've done or tool you've used in your job that you become very proficient with, that those companies would love to have you. You know, because you already know how to use it and you know how to talk to people. You talk their language. So the point I'm making is, within all these industries, and tonight we're talking about nursing, but within all these industries, the one thing that I see they have in common is, within each one, there's all these spiders of different paths you can take. You know, whether it's sales or still working with the customer or the patient, or teaching. You know, we didn't even talk about teaching. You're teaching now, basically, right? Aren't you, Sue?
Yep.
You're
Yes.
teaching people, right? You're teaching
Yes.
people. Nick, you might get tired of being on the floor someday, and you might say, "Hey, look, I'd like to go teach people. Okay, I'd like to go teach. Got my bachelor's degree. They kind of liked me when I was going to school. Maybe I'll go back there, see if they got a slot for me." You know, I think that's what's amazing about these industries. About these industries that start as a 2-year degree or a trade school or a certificate program, and then these people take them and they go wherever they want with them. And some of them keep going at night. Like both of you are an example of people that just 11 years, 11 years. Think about it. You only go to primary school for 12 years. It took you 11 years to get your bachelor's degree. All right. I'm not laughing at you, but I just know how long it took for you, and you paid for all of it. Okay. Nick, you just keep hanging in there with it. And with all you know already, to see your face light up with passion when you talked about this team nursing, in the event you would have to go in and take some slack up, even though you're on the elective side kind of now. I want to say kind of elective, scheduled, a lot of your stuff scheduled, kind of call it scheduled nursing. You're ready to get up and go with these other people. And when you're training with them, you're learning stuff and you're still excited about it. I mean, I think that's pretty cool. I think that tells a lot.
I like the fact that none of you got complacent. I mean, there's nothing holding y'all back. The only thing holding you back is you, and neither in your cases is that the case. Y'all just keep on going. A lot of people get complacent, whether it's blue collar, white collar. You know, they get a job, they get in that stuck rut, that 7 to 3, 9 to 5, whatever it is, and they don't just keep growing. Where both of you continue to keep changing. You know, keep growth. That's where it's at, and it looks like your industry has a lot of growth potential.
I think too, there's another piece to this too, in looking at, I mean, I grew up with a very strong work ethic. Our father was like a dog with work. And if you know Dave, you know that.
Yes, we know Dave, man, they don't stop.
And I think that it used to be that you went to work for a company and you were there for your lifetime. And I think that those things have changed. But I also think that the employer, I would like to think they take some responsibility in looking at their employees and helping them identify their strengths. And maybe they don't move around. Maybe they stay in one hospital system for their life is related to nursing, but they grow within that hospital system and are offered and supported through various opportunities to ultimately get where, you know, they're mentored on through various opportunities or any kind of a business you have where the employer says, boy, this, you know, this person's great, you know, they're a great mechanic, but boy, they could really, I heard them talk to somebody about our product. They can really sell our product. Maybe I should help nurture them in sales. So I think the other piece of this is that an opportunity for people who employ others for their business to really help nurture them. And they might stay, you know, for their whole entire professional life in that business because they've been nurtured in different opportunities to help that business grow. I think it's a win-win.
Agreed.
I want to just jump in and say that when Jeb mentioned that this is our inaugural show, by the way, would be about nursing. It hit me in a way that I knew was emotional, and I'm sure lots of folks who will end up watching this at some point who will have that same emotional feeling about talking about nurses because of experiences, with battles, with medical situations with their loved ones or themselves. But and I guess I'm giving a plug to my first book, but the it was based on the 28-year battle that my first wife had with cancer, and significant portions of it are about being in the hospitals and the strength and character, usually, of the medical folks, and having been contacted by at least a handful of doctors over the years who have read the book and said that it should be required reading by all medical folks when it comes to patient interactions for nurses, but and significantly doctors, that did not always come off all that well in the book. But anyway, I'm here to say that I am awe of what you do and very thankful. And if there's any advice that you could give to folks that might be considering or on the edge of maybe deciding to, where they're at that point of, should I continue in nursing in the medical field or make a change, what would you have to say? Start with Sue. You've been
I would just really look at your options carefully before you make a change like that. I would talk to those in your profession who you hold in high regard. And sometimes you just have to, it feels right, do the gut test. Does it feel like a good change? And sometimes even if it turns out not to be a good change, you come out having learned a lot and then move on to a better change. It's like anything you do in life, it's a path. And
a spider web.
But I would, spider web.
And one thing about nursing, no matter what, like you're always going to find a job with that, right?
Yeah. But I would definitely reach out to people in your surroundings, in your circle, who are also nurses, and talk about the change, what you want to do, and weigh the pros and cons of anything, which you should do no matter what you're doing in life.
Nick?
I agree with her. I changed my direction in nursing during my bachelor's degree, and I think school helped me make that decision. And having that avenue, having people to talk with at work and during my nursing program helped me make that choice. It was tough because all I knew was bedside, and I wanted to see what else was. I know there's other stuff out there. I just wanted to.
Nick, that's a question. That's a question I was going to ask you earlier. Is there one or two or like three, like throughout your career, no matter where you've ended up, were there two or three like mentors that you had that kind of led you along? Was that important to you, having a mentor?
I think my prior to nursing school, a lot of it, I was in the ICU for so long, so I got to pick nurses' brains. The bedside nurses in the ICU, the trauma doctors, the trauma nurses, ER, radiology. So I was a sponge so young, and it kind of developed what I like and what I want to do. So you kind of find what you're good at in nursing, and that's how I was able to change professionally, or I didn't second guess myself. I like Sue said, my gut feeling, like, would I like this? Is this something that I can see myself being at? And also having so many other options, you don't have to stay there. That's a skill that you can hone and then say, hey, did this work for me or did not work for me? And I could take it to wherever I want. You can travel with it. And so,
Sure.
but I think going with your gut feeling, talking with people, really helped me figure out who I want to be as a nurse. And you keep on learning. I mean, your continuing education kind of helps, like, oh, I'm learning something new, or I can apply this to the job I have now. Change the my thinking of how I should care for this patient.
That's great. We're coming up at our hour. Closing comments. Sue, talk. If there's somebody out there that's going to watch this and is thinking about nursing, or watches you like, man, maybe this is me. What's your message to that person, and how? I mean, what are you going to tell them?
Depending where you are, whether you're in high school or in college, I would definitely, whether you go get a job in a nursing home, in a hospital, in a pediatric, if you like children and think, oh, I really want to do that, I would definitely recommend that you do that. A lot of people going into nursing school now sometimes they have the opportunity to become a certified nursing assistant in high school and end up working in a nursing home or home health and get that certification, or they go to the hospital and become the similar qualification in a hospital. And those kind of things really help you sort of try it out. There's a lot of opportunities to try it out, actually, like apprenticeships kind of before you do it.
Right.
And take advantage of those situations. And I think sometimes maybe I didn't have any nursing. There were no nurses in our family that I'm aware of. And like I said, being a waitress just kind of got
There
me
were only
there.
people going to the doctor, not being.
Yeah, really. But I think that if you reach out to friends who maybe are a nurse or their mother was a nurse and sort of talk about their feelings about it. I think sometimes people aren't really sure whether it's wanting to become a nurse or becoming a dentist or a veterinarian. I think sometimes they don't know. I mean, it globally what it is. You know if you go to the dentist, what they're going to do. But to really understand what they do, I think you have to kind of be at their side or work in that situation in a lesser capacity to sort of see what they do. And that helps you decide if you like it or not.
Get your feet wet.
Correct. And that's what I would definitely recommend no matter what you do.
Nick?
I agree. A lot of me before I became a nurse was a lot of behind the scenes, seeing what nurses do, and I knew I already wanted to help people out, and I love the whole, how can I fix someone, or how can I help them when they're injured or sick. So that it helped me out.
Hey, Nick, is that feeling, not to interrupt you, but is that feeling like of being needed? Kind of a neat feeling, right? I mean, even in my industry, like I'm a refrigeration guy, but I used to know if my pager went off at 9 o'clock at night, as weird as it sounds, and it was someplace I had to go, maybe a walk-in freezer, walk-in cooler with them, that I was the guy and they needed me and I felt needed and I felt like I was helping somebody. Is it kind of that, a little bit of rush of that sometimes?
Yeah, so the satisfaction that what Sue said is helping, knowing that I helped that person, and even if they didn't say thank you, or there was a bump in the road during the care of the patient, it was like I knew I gave it my all, and I enjoyed that. I enjoyed helping someone because just explaining to them layman's terms of what I'm going to do, and some of the patients just appreciate that because they're like, no one explained to me anything. What was going on, and just doing that, sitting with the patient and talking with them, I enjoyed that. I enjoyed making sure my patient is cared for.
Nick, I would as a nurse for me anytime, but I've got to ask you this one question. Was there any, like when you got into nursing, because it's just a question I got to ask, was there ever a stigma? Because I mean, when I was younger, when people thought of nurses, they thought of women. I mean, honestly, like when my sister went into nursing, I never knew of any dudes that were nurses. But now, and look, trust me, I've been in the hospital. I've had some male nurses, and they were outstanding. But with you, was there any ever stigma with that, or was that a roadblock or anything?
And before you answer that, I would like to say, if I ever have to get a catheter, Nick, you're my guy. I know you've got kind hands.
Hey, I'd let Dick put it in, but I probably want Susan to pull it out.
Just take a deep breath. Just take a deep breath.
It's only that long, by the way. I thought that thing was longer. It's only that long.
The catheter is pretty
The
long.
catheter, yeah, well, the catheter. I had the catheter. I was down that road. But you know what I'm saying? Was there any stigma that you ever had to, like? Have you ever walked into a room and somebody like did the reverse Me Too, and they're like, "What's this dude coming in here? I want like a nurse."
Yeah,
You're like, I am a nurse.
Yes,
They probably thought he was the doctor.
Probably.
So the movie Meet the Fuckers, that was a good punchline for a while. The old kitty and. But even I would say this past year, someone comes like, "Why is he taking care of you? Why he shouldn't be at the." And that's hit the family member talking to the patient, and I'm overhearing that. Some cultures prefer same genders, so, and I respect that. I was like, you know what? If you don't want me to take care of you, I'm okay with that. But I'm here to help you. I'm here to help your family member the best way I can. And if it means finding that right person to take care of that person, I'm okay with that.
Mm-hmm. That's a good attitude, Nick. Good attitude.
It's funny. It's funny. It's like, I'm here, man. If you need anything, I'm here to help.
Well, I think about it in our industry, like in the air conditioning industry. Like I have women now that are techs. They go out and do like preventive maintenance and stuff, and I know they're expecting a dude to come through the door, and there's a girl coming through the door carrying her gauges and a tool belt, and I get countless accolades from these girls that have worked at my company. I mean, just people call the office. That girl was amazing. She came in, she got right to work, she knew what she was doing, she was prepared, she wasn't on her phone, she paid attention to her work. So I just wonder if the opposite is. Not to take away from the female nurses, of course, but I know I've seen it in my industry work the other way. Like, why? Wait a minute! I thought a dude was coming in here to fix this thing, and you got a 28-year-old girl in there changing a blower motor or something, So I commend you for getting through that part because I know it's got to be there. I know there's got to be some stigma there, but you guys won't protest or anything. I don't want to see any marches on the Capitol or anything like that.
we go to the battle. You see these nurses, respiratory therapists going to where there's need versus running from it.
Wow, that's good stuff there. As an asthmatic, I appreciate that too.
Take a deep breath.
Doing okay right now.
That's awesome. We've extended our hour a little bit. I'd like to thank the panel, the nurses. You guys were amazing. You made our first show hopefully look great. I know I didn't. Dave, probably not so much. Chuck, probably not either. It was you guys.
I think it was them.
Yeah, it was definitely y'all. So what we'd like to do too, so if anybody wants to ask a question to Nick or Sue, if they want to drop it into the Facebook page, they both have liked the page, and y'all be happy to answer any questions, right? Or set them up with a direct message?
No, I'm fine. Sure.
Okay, great.
Anytime.
I appreciate that. Nick, same with you?
Yeah.
Okay. Set them up, they can act directly, there could be some personal stuff going on. Chuck, you look quiet tonight, but you were deep, bud. I appreciate you.
Yeah. What I'm trying to come up with something really smart since I'm supposed to be a writer and all, but it was a great first show and could not have been a better subject.
I'd also like to commend Chuck's son, who's sitting to my immediate left, that is in charge of all the technical stuff that I have no idea what he's doing over here.
Greg.
Gary, he goes by Greg Gary.
Or Chuck.
Greg Gary.
Greg also hosted us last week on his show. That was our first kind of get our feet wet on this podcast.
Three
tonight. So,
Craters.
Three Craters. Thanks very much. Y'all can tune in, follow his site. Three
Craters with a K.
Yes, Three Craters with a K. We were on his show last week. They hosted us to get us going on this journey. We appreciate them. And Nick, thank you very much. Sue, thank you very much. Dave, closing remarks. Anything you got?
I just want to say, Nick, I like you. You're a great guy, and I like your passion. I like your passion. It's amazing to see somebody. I like, and I've talked about this before. I like anybody that has a passion for what they do. And dude, your eyes light up when you talk about what you do, and just keep doing whatever you do. And there's a lot of lucky patients out there. Same goes for Sue. She's done every kind of nursing in the world. Like you, Nick. Love you, Sue. Good seeing both of you. Thanks for coming in, and I hope you'll come in and join us again.
Yeah. And back to Dave's message, passion. This is what we talk about. Follow your passion, money will follow. Guaranteed. No matter what you decide to do, stick with your passion. The money will always follow. And
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And we